Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Mitsubishi Electric podcast. This time we have a very heavy topic of sustainability. So the conversation might be longer than usual, but it's definitely worthwhile to stay for the whole thing because we have a couple of interesting perspectives. So as the last time, we have a couple of people representing very different countries and also different points of view on the sustainability topic. So we will spend a good 40-50 minutes on the conversation. There will be a shorter than usual Q&A session. Therefore, if you have some questions, don't be shy, put them in the chat, and we will pick them up at the end of the conversation. So let's start with painting the big picture, because I think there is a lot of confusion around sustainability. And sustainability itself is not that well defined, in my opinion. So we will start with the big picture, and Deap, as an expert in sustainability, could you kind of tell us what it actually is?
Absolutely. So when we're talking about sustainability in business, it's really about conducting operations in a way that meets the needs of today, but also not to compromise any of the needs of future generations. And we think about sustainability that has evolved over the last few decades. So when we started to see this emerge in the marketplace, it was a very reactive. So any crisis that happened, it was acted on in a very reactive way. And now we're starting to see more strategic approach. And as we move forward, we're starting to see more and more businesses take a more long-term approach and forward-thinking approach when it comes to sustainability. But I think it's really important for businesses to really understand the context of which we're operating in, because we're working in an environment of real complex challenges today. So when we see environmental challenges, we're seeing more and more natural disasters, lack of resource availability. It's coming really clear to see that it's affecting businesses on a day-to-day level. So, for example, disruptions in supply chain and getting product where it needs to get to. We're also starting to see more and more impacts on society as well. So it's not just looking at the environmental viewpoint, it's also understanding how society is changing. So there is becoming more and more lack of trust, say within businesses, within politics, etc. Also looking at how to include and give more opportunities to people, making sure people are safe, and also navigating this space of political and economic uncertainty. So it's really thinking about all of those things in a really holistic way. But when we're thinking about sustainability as well, it's also understanding the drivers of all these different types of stakeholders that are involved. So when thinking about the investors, for example, their main priority is to manage risk, minimize risk. And the incentives being brought to the market today and what they're bringing is getting more and more affordable rates for finance with sustainable processes, basically. And then we're also seeing customers demanding more sustainable products and services. And they're preferring brands that have more sustainable products in the marketplace. And we're also seeing employees that are wanting to work for more purpose-led businesses. So I would say that's kind of really a snapshot of what sustainability is today.
Yeah, and so you are talking about many recent challenges. However, a lot of these things are already in, let's say, scope of interest for example, for Japan. Because Japan, the natural disasters in Japan, they are well known for a long time for different reasons. And I think that Japanese approach to sustainability could be interesting to companies around the world. So maybe, Maria, could you maybe explain in a couple of words what is the Japanese take on the topic?
Yeah, of course. So in Japan, sustainability is viewed as a long-term commitment that balances both environmental, social, and economical goals. And this approach, it's also known as the Society 5.0 approach, is about building a super smart society where human and technology basically can coexist. And to make this happen, we must focus both on the way to carbon neutrality. We must look at the circular economy and safety and security. But it's also about the inclusion and well-being. And with inclusion, I mean building a diverse workplace to foster innovation and social responsibility. And with well-being, I mean supporting the health and the well-being of our employees, our fellow humans, and entire communities. So what makes this approach a bit unique is this focus on caring for all the people and our shared resources in a very fast-changing world where the technology advances every day. So Society 5.0 is a more far-reaching concept than the fourth industrial revolution, you can say, because it transformed people's everyday life when the line between this cyberspace and the physical space is being more and more blurred out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the Society 5.0, clearly it's a bigger story than just the industrial production. That is, I think, quite clear. However, the conversation today will revolve to a big extent around the manufacturing. So let's talk about it. So we have a lot of industrial production that clearly has to take sustainability into consideration. So Wojciech, how does it look from your experience? So how manufacturing companies are approaching sustainability?
Okay, so let me first say that we as humans and as a society, I have to say that we are very lucky to live in today's world, due to the fact that for many years energy was just considered by the manufacturing as just necessary part of the production process and just the necessary cost that you have to take, right? While right now with all the ESG initiatives, with the supported also by the legislation, and also with the increased awareness and consciousness of the society, this is something more than just a necessary cost for companies, which is finally forcing manufacturing companies to strive to save the energy and finally at the end make the world we live in more sustainable. So this is the good information for us as the society and humans. But I have also good information for the manufacturing. Let's first take a little bit look at the data. So globally we are consuming annually more or less 26 terawatt hours of the energy. And out of this, 50% globally is consumed by electric motors. This is actually the field that I am originally coming from. If you take a look at the industry, as much as 75% of the electric energy is used by electric drive systems. And the good information is that according to the estimates of International Energy Agency, with already known technology and practices, just by increasing the efficiency of drive systems, we are able to save as much as 25% of the energy. So from this point of view, we could say that being sustainable and implementing sustainable practices into real life should be relatively easy.
Mm-hmm. I guess we will delve deeper into this, but first I wanted to also introduce a very important concept of circular economy, which is, as Maria mentioned, one of those 5 aspects that we care about. And circular economy is a relatively new concept comparing to the past, where it was quite common to simply take the resource, produce the product, and basically dispose it. These days, it's doesn't work like that anymore. It's not sustainable. So circular economy is all about saving on the resources, including the energy, including the raw material. It's about repairing the product and recycling of what's there. So I think maybe we can discuss the recycling a little bit, especially since we have a person who has very big experience in metal recycling. So, as a metal recycling, as a means to achieving circular economy, what are the key challenges in that industry, Thomas?
Yeah, so Piotr, so the metal recycling is a very important part of the circular economy because you can see the world population is growing. We have more need for steel, automotive industry, the white goods, washing machines, refrigerators, but also in the building construction, for example. But on the other hand, let's say the natural resources are limited. So in this case, the metal recycling is a very important factor here. Because here, let's say, already 630 million tons of scrap are recycled already in the world, and 960 million tons of CO2 are already saved. And due to that fact, we have a lot of possibilities here with the metal recycling. And it's not consuming so many energy in producing, let's say, the steel as it is when you're mining, for example, the steel out of natural resources. So, for example, we have in Germany, the market is 50 billion euros strong, and already 50% of the recycled market, let's say, is one out of secondary steel. So that's a huge portion already, and the tendency is increasing. So there, with the metal recycling, there is something really, what is really interesting for us as Mitsubishi Electric, something in common, because both this industry as well as Mitsubishi Electric want to save CO2 as well. And here, the point is that the metal recycling, the tendency is that until 2050, 65% of the market will be won via secondary steel, via recycled steel. Whereas Mitsubishi Electric has a target to be even net zero in 2050. Mm-hmm. So to reach those targets in the future, the European Union has set up, let's say, new legislation, the European Efficiency Directive, the EED, which is basically putting the customers into the position, all customers manufacture more than 2.5 million gigawatt hours per year, have to register on a certain portal and have to show the energy measures which they are doing, basically. And in this case, let's say Mitsubishi Electric has a lot of possibilities with futures to support the customers to reach those targets.
Mm. And it's interesting how we are talking mostly about the manufacturing industry, but it's clear how to be able to achieve sustainability, we kind of left factories to these recycling plants, which are a little bit different. But I think there is another example that maybe, Maria, you could share from your experience and the way how food waste is recycled currently in many regions in Europe.
Mm-hmm. So food waste is a major contributor to the global problems of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. And technology in the right application can actually help face this problem. And some problems can actually be solved in 24 hours in this case, because I will give you a great example of a partnership that we have with a company called Solserv in Sweden. Solserv develop compost machines with the automation built into it, and they can process any organic material from 5 kilos to 100 tons and transform this organic material into nutritious soil within just 24 hours. That is pretty amazing. I learned, because I visited the Radisson Blu Hotel in Gothenburg, where they have this machine. And I learned how the composting system not only reduces the waste disposal cost for the company, but also creates soil that they actually grow the vegetables that they are using in the hotel restaurant with. So it's really a great example of the circular solution. And can you just imagine, if every hotel, school kitchen, and restaurant would adopt such a solution, that could, for real, transform waste management. And there is also a very important point in this, I think, and that is by applying this solution to school kitchens, for example. We can also educate our children about circular processes already from a young age, by teaching them that we can actually turn waste, food waste in this case, into soil that they can grow flowers or some vegetables with. And at the same time, we educate them about the importance of biodiversity, because not all people and kids today know that, for instance, when a bee visits a tomato flower, it aids in pollination, leading to fruit production. So I strongly believe that by engaging like this with nature, we and our children learn to appreciate the relationship within ecosystems, and the essential role that actually each organism plays in the circular solution. So when we educate, we help people to understand and to care, and if we then can apply a smart technology into these processes, we can actually make real changes for the better.
And I like this example because it shows how this well-being part is a huge portion of the sustainability concept here,
Yeah,
right?
you're right, yeah.
So it's not only technology that solves the problem of food waste, but it's also helping us to educate the younger generation. Yeah. So it's an interesting example. I think we will discuss about it a little bit more later. And yes, as you said, this is a problem that potentially could be solved in 24 hours, as you mentioned. I assume this is not going to be the case with the next topic that we will tackle, which is the carbon neutrality. I assume if this could happen in 24 hours, it already would, because it is very severe for many companies. But I think there is a lot of misconceptions about the carbon neutrality as well. So again, I would reach to Deap for a little bit of clarification on that very important topic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're seeing in the marketplace, wherever we see targets being set, carbon neutrality and net zero being used interchangeably, and they can get very, very confusing. So I think when we're talking about this subject, it's sometimes really important to go back to where these targets really had come from. And in this case, it's really looking at the Paris Agreement that was set in 2015. And this is where all the nations came together and agreed that that temperatures of our planet cannot go above 1.5 degrees after pre-industrial levels. And so that's kind of really important to understand before we get into breaking those terminologies down. And what it ultimately means is, reducing the greenhouse gas emissions of our planet to stop those temperatures rising above the 1.5 degrees. And there are different categories of greenhouse gas emissions. So it's really broken down into 3 different categories: Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3. And so when we talk about Scope 1 emissions, it's very much the direct emissions that your own operations emit. So how much energy you're emitting, how much emissions that you're emitting through your building, for example. And then there's the Scope 2. So that's the energy that you're purchasing. So what are the emissions related to the energy of that? And then there's Scope 3. So they're the indirect emissions that sit across your value chain. And that's much more challenging for a business to reduce those, because it's not necessarily within a business's direct control. So it can go all the way from upstream, so sourcing of the raw materials, all the way to downstream of, recycling and reusing products, essentially. So when we think about then now the terminology of what carbon neutrality actually means or net zero actually means, we can think about it in those scopes. So when we think about carbon neutrality and carbon neutrality goals, what that actually means is reducing scope 1 and scope 2. So the emissions that a business is in control of. So the direct emissions that we emit and also the emissions that we purchase through our energy. And then we look at net zero targets, and that's much more of a challenge to actually achieve. And they're very ambitious for countries and businesses alike. And that's inclusive of scope 3 emissions. So it's really looking about how we collaborate and how we engage with our value chain on all stakeholders from upstream all the way to downstream, and working together to be able to find innovative solutions, efficiencies to reduce all 3 categories of emissions to as a minimal level as possible. But there are also benefits when we think about factory automation or this industry, manufacturing. We think about what the role of automation does within the industry. What it does is it optimizes energy. It makes sure that things are becoming more efficient. So therefore reducing emissions already, not only costs, but it's also reducing that and helping towards achieving those particular targets, whether it be carbon neutrality or net zero. And it also has the opportunity to tap into that renewable energy source. So it's also having that additional benefit as well.
Yeah, and I think we will discuss the influence of technology, particularly automation, on that topic. But it's a complex topic, and usually when we have this kind of complex thing to solve, usually our answer is one step at a time, and we can discuss those examples from manufacturing. Let's start with manufacturing. So again, Wojciech, I would ask you, working with production sites, how those companies who are manufacturing goods are approaching carbon neutrality.
Okay, so, well, if I had to say how we can approach this one step at a time, definitely my primary advice would be that we always have to start with the measurements. It was said that if you can't measure something, you cannot manage it. So the same stands for the energy. Let me say that, well, in Mitsubishi Electric, we say in terms of the energy that it has to be used just in time. So it means that the energy must be used in the right place, in the right amount, and at the right moment. So as long as you are not measuring your energy usage in a continuous way, so it doesn't mean physical readouts from time to time. It means that you have an automated system which is automatically measuring and collecting the data, which can be then transferred and converted into, let's say, easy to understand interface for the energy manager. As long as you are not doing it, you can't say that you are managing the energy. So definitely this is like the first step that you have to start with. Going back to what I said before, I mentioned that according to the estimates of International Energy Agency, in terms of electric drive systems, with existing technology, we could save as much as 25% of the energy. So from the field of electric drives, where these kind of savings might possibly come from, of course, there are various areas, and a lot of them we could speak for an hour, probably here or more, about where you can possibly find savings. But let me mention maybe 3 kind of quick tips how I would approach this if I was a member of a manufacturing company. Actually, this is something what we are also doing with our customers. I mean, a kind of advisory service. So first advice, and this is a kind of obvious thing probably, is that whenever you can, you have to install the VFD. If you are having an application such as fan or pump, generally variable torque application, wherever you have a space to reduce the speed and by this save the energy, you should do it. But this is kind of obvious thing, and I believe that all mature organizations from the manufacturing, they are doing this already. However, there is, for example, a second step, which is not so much obvious, and this is actually coming from my past experience, that you should also make sure, apart from just installing the VFD, you should also make sure that it's running in an appropriate mode. So to speak like about the possible effect that you might have, overall, when you are running, when the VFD is running pump or fan, after you install the after you install the frequency inverter, you can observe as much as 50% energy saving in this application. But then there is another 10 to 20% possible savings thanks to correct parameterization and setup of the device. So just by setting the appropriate control mode for the drive, you can save further 10 to 20% of the energy. And this is actually a case which is coming from one of our customers, by the way, Japanese company. Moreover, I can say that the person who was responsible for executing the project of correctly setting up all the drives which were installed in the manufacturing plant, finally, at the end, he got a kind of corporate award for energy-saving activity. So it was a very, I would say, interesting case study. So make sure that all VFDs installed in your plant, they are running in the correct, appropriate mode, which is adjusted to the type of application that they are driving. And then, as a third advice, I would say that overall on the drive system, we must have a kind of comprehensive, holistic approach. And by this, I mean that if we would analyze the efficiency of the drive system, it's not only the motor which is inside, it also matters what is the efficiency of the VFD, but then also at the end, there is very often transmission system. So if we would, let's say, focus a little bit more on the data, efficiency of the VFD would be, let's say, around 98-99%. So there is not much you can do about the VFD itself. About the motor, which is in the middle, let's say, of the drive system, there are already a lot of initiatives like Eco-Design Directive. So at this moment, the minimum obligatory efficiency class is IE3. And in the future, we can expect that there will be, let's say, more demanding requirements for the motors itself. But there is also an area which is not very well managed at this moment, and these are transmission systems. And it is very likely that in the drive system, where you have 98% efficiency of VFD, 95% efficiency of the motor, so relatively high class, I have to say, then you are still using a gearbox which has efficiency of 60-70%. And already nowadays there are solutions which are allowing you to achieve 90-95% of the efficiency in the transmission system. So still, this is, I would say, the area which is not yet very well managed, and there is an area which requires improvement in the future. So at the end, as a conclusion, this kind of energy-saving activities, with the recent technology that we are having, it doesn't really have to be very complicated. Moreover, at the end, of course, you can get very reasonable and sufficient savings, which finally would generate more money for the future investment, which will drive your company to become sustainable.
Yeah, and what I hear when you talk is that I said that the topic is quite complex, but you just said that there is potential for 20% saving just because you are setting up your inverter in the right mode, which is definitely something easy to do. And I think many could implement this kind of simple strategies.
Absolutely, and there is no investment cost. I mean, you just need the time of your, let's say, maintenance or automation team to make sure that it's running in the proper mode.
So this is an example, and a good example how technology could be an answer to the carbon neutrality problem. And maybe let's go back to the recycling industry. So we already established that metal recycling is helping in the, let's say, realization of some of the sustainability concepts. But obviously, metal recycling is also energy hungry industry. So what are the initiatives there, Thomas, to solve this problem?
Yeah, absolutely. So metal recycling is very energy intense. And as you know, the energy prices are rising and the pressure on the market, especially for the plant operators, is very high to be competitive. So let's say they want to, increase the productivity, of course, but reduce the costs, of course, for the energy, for the production costs. So in this case, for example, the frequency inverter, as just mentioned before, is a very good way to increase, let's say, the productivity and to reduce, let's say, the power consumption. So you have many possibilities to use the frequency inverter and to improve the cost situation in the recycling industry. So you have conveyor belts, you have the shredders, for example, you have the air treatment units, where you can save a lot of costs by using the frequency inverter. So what we are doing typically, also what Wojciech mentioned, is that we are offering energy measurement, for example, for the customer to, let's say, analyze his load profile, for example, and to find out where are the measures where we can improve, let's say, his production. So traditionally, I would say the recycling industry is coming also from hydraulic couplings, for example, which are turning the friction into heat losses, for example, where we can, let's say, make them obsolete, basically. And also, let's say, the slip ring motors do need a lot of services, for example. No? So here in this case, let's say, the modern frequency inverters are kicking in with induction motors, which have a lot of advantages. For example, the frequency inverter, he can save a lot of energy by his peak load management, for example. So that is a big advantage, let's say, to save energy costs, as he's doing some torque management, and that is, let's say, the effect. And furthermore, let's say, due to the physics of the frequency inverter, he has the possibility, due to his, let's say, big capacitor in the DC bus, to bring the power factor close to 1. So that means the reactance will be very low. So the customer is really paying the energy costs which he's consuming. So that is, let's say, a big advantage at the frequency inverter. And that can make even compensation units obsolete for the customer. So that is a very big advantage. So having this been said, let's say, those are very important factors, but for the recycling industry, it's also very important to be very reliable and to keep the availability very high at the plant. So that means we are using, of course, inverters with long life components inside. But on the other hand, we are using also our Iconics IoT platform, for example, which allows you also to do the energy management, for example, which is auditable also for the new legislations. But on the other hand, you are also able to treat your assets in the right way, which means, for example, that a customer can, for example, plan his service time, for example, for 10 years. And so he can do basically, let's say, the servicing during, let's say, the inspection of his plant. No? And so he will not have any downtimes.
And it's interesting point because it seems the energy saving, something that has been in the industry for a while, and something that clearly all companies have to do. It involves a lot of different activities. So I think that we can't have discussion about sustainability without discussing the workforce topics. And I'm talking here about typical problem of addressing the labor shortages that are quite prevailing, but also discussing what will be needed in the future when it comes to companies, advanced companies who are on their way to sustainability. So maybe let's start with these future skills. Deap, what is your experience and your predictions when it comes to the future of workforce in the new, let's say, greener economy?
It's a really great question. It's also a really important question, and we're starting to see this play out today. And over the last few years, we're starting to see countries set net zero goals, and these are really ambitious goals for countries to be setting, with UK being the first one. And this is and having that transition to that net zero world is going to have significant impacts on the labour force today. And we're already starting to see, a couple of years ago there was a term, the war on talent, and with the green skills that are out there in the marketplace at the moment, there's a lot of demand for them, and there's not enough demand to meet the needs of all the companies that we're seeing having more and more activity towards their net zero ambitions. And so in order to kind of manage this, it's really important to take the skills that are out there and accessible skills, and being able to retrain the existing labour force that we have in all of our businesses, take the learnings from the examples that we've already heard from, with those learnings and thinking about things in a broader way, and being able to then scale that learning into a business, and by growing those green skills within your workforce, it enables kind of 4 different factors. And I would say the first one is really gauging that long-term impact of certain actions on the environment and making those better decisions. It also evaluates the effectiveness of various green initiatives that are being put in place. And it also kind of can help keep track of those climate action plans that are being set by companies at the moment. And what that also does is it helps with the storytelling, the narrative of business, really engaging and inspiring of what is actually possible. Because sometimes we can face challenges and it can feel like a little bit, it feels a bit downtrodden, very hard to keep going. But actually, when you're hearing those success stories, it keeps people motivated with high energy to keep going towards those ambitions.
And we can discuss about specific examples, because I would say that, again, metal recycling industry is one of those, future-looking industries where clearly there will be a need for certain skills. So how does it look today in those plants? What kind of people work there?
Yeah, let's say the metal recycling industry is a very interesting industry because, scrap is here, was there in the past and will be also in the future. So it is really an investment if you are a new worker, a young worker, to, let's say, invest into your future and have the possibility to influence, let's say, the environmental protection yourself, and to do something proactively. So in Germany, for example, there are 37,000 workers in the metal recycling in approximately 7,000 companies. And let's say the tendency is growing. So it is really in investment into the future. And if you ask about the skills, I would say there's a variety of skills requested. So you have, of course, the waste management, which is, let's say, very complex to understand the process of a recycling, how you recycle ferromagnetic materials from non-ferromagnetic materials, for example, but also how you are, for example, procuring the material and selling the material like a broker, for example, but also fresh air lovers are, let's say, requested, for example, like lorry drivers and caterpillar drivers, for example. But let's say the industry is also changing because the pressure of productivity is very high. So also the IT skills are requested quite a lot. So to keep the assets and the overview of the assets clear. So that means that, let's say, the machine and the production will never stop, basically. So finally, I would say that the working in the metal recycling is really a possibility for workers, young workers also, to influence their future and to do something proactively, and working like in a family business, let's say. And so it brings them really a nice environment. So I think it is a great way to influence the environmental protection for them.
So you could say these people know they are working for, let's say, the future of the society, right? So obviously it helps them with the motivation levels, right? Okay, what about labor shortages then? So we talk about it quite often, and I think many production sites have the problem to replace, for example, experienced people who are leaving for retirement. So Wojciech, how technology is supporting that problem?
Okay, so well, some people might think that it's a kind of paradox because the world population is growing, but we can hear everywhere that one of the challenges that we are facing, and especially in the manufacturing field, is the labor shortage. So what is my point of view about how the recent technology is affecting that? I need to jump in for a second to, let's say, Mitsubishi Electric Wendt and how do we approach the topic of designing drives. Later on, I'll try to point out how this is affecting, okay? So if you take a look at how Mitsubishi Electric designs, well, not only drives, but let me speak on the on the example of drives. So one of the key principles how do we design drives is that we want them to be extremely trouble-free for the end user, and generally, in our understanding, they must provide you peace of mind, so to say. How this was understood for many years is that we made our devices extremely reliable, but this is something what already happened 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago when we started to manufacture and to deliver VFDs. At the same time, I have to tell you that Mitsubishi Electric is extremely, so I will read the statement that we are the most innovative company if we are speaking about preventive and predictive maintenance solutions. And this is coming out from our philosophy that the device should be trouble-free for the end user. So, for instance, already 15 years ago, we implemented probably as the first company on the market, we already implemented a lot of preventive maintenance functions. We were first on the market to do this. But it's something that already happened 15 years ago. What we could see during my career in Mitsubishi is that we were the first manufacturer and first supplier on the market who implemented in drives very smart technologies, for instance, related to, if we are speaking about the maintenance field, technologies related to predictive maintenance. So the drive is online in real time checking its condition and giving you the warning advice that, for instance, you have to plan the maintenance. What we can see right now, and this is something what is happening to let's say, generations which are already released to the market, and this will be, of course, further expanded to new generation of drives, is that we are already using AI-supported tools. And these tools are used, for example, to shorten the time which is necessary for troubleshooting, but also these AI technologies, they are used to detect early anomalies in the drive system and then tell you in advance that, for example, you have to plan the maintenance. And now, okay, it was a little bit maybe long description on what technology is available, but then
quick lesson in history.
But then coming to your point, okay, so how does it affect the labor and the people who are working in the manufacturing sector? So first effect is that if one of the challenges that you are facing is related to the retention of employees, it means that with the currently existing technology, the time which is needed, for example, for the maintenance engineer to onboard him, to make sure that he's doing his job in proper way, is much shorter than it used to be before. Because in the past, you really needed a lot of experience with some certain manufacturer and model. And right now, this process of being able to diagnose the device and then to repair it and to act to solve some troubles is much shorter than before. Speaking about well-being, I don't know if Maria mentioned or you mentioned about the well-being. So we can also easily imagine how this is affecting the well-being of the maintenance team. These teams are normally working under very high pressure because if there is unplanned breakdown, it really creates a lot of unnecessary losses for the manufacturing side, okay? So thanks to all these technologies, we can say that overall the level of stress is much reduced. And, you know, in today's world, stress is killing us, yeah? So at least I feel personally that this is how Mitsubishi Electric is answering the needs of the current society and its well-being. Moreover, there's one more aspect which is definitely worth mentioning, that in the past, you could not imagine that the maintenance team can work remotely. And right now, if the drive can diagnose itself and can give you very early warning that there are some abnormalities, you do not need to go around the factory to do the physical checkup because many of the defects will be discovered on early stage by the device itself, and you can work partially remotely. And this is also affecting, of course, our well-being if this kind of possibility
and safety as well. So that's a good point.
That's true.
And
last thing, Piotr, if you would allow me. So let me jump a little bit in the topic of the energy management and the energy saving activities. in the past, the energy manager used to be a very well-qualified electrician doing the physical readouts of your energy meters. Right now, this is all collected by the completely automated systems. And moreover, the data analysis is further supported by tools like EcoAdvisor, for example, from Mitsubishi Electric. So this means that the current energy manager is not anymore an electrician. He's rather a data analyst in today's world. So this is how the technology is, affecting the transition of the society into society 5.0.
It's not surprising that AI is becoming one of those answers, right, to the problem, because if we can't get the real intelligence on the market, we can always turn to artificial one. Good. I think this conversation was longer than usual, so I will also close the meeting in a different way and actually turn to Maria for that, because the well-being is a huge portion of the sustainable societies of the future. That is the claim we are making. And Maria, you have been featured in one of our case studies recently, showing that you personally live a very green life. So maybe as a finishing touch, maybe you can share your experience with that.
Yeah, of course. So going back to the more like personal, individual well-being of human, sustainability to me is about making conscious choices. And that means making decision that cares for people, animal, nature, and the well-being of the one planet that we all share. So that means being aware of where the food I eat comes from, and that it is in season, choosing products that are durable and repairable rather than this use and throw away things. But this is also important. I don't think that it has to be an all or nothing approach, because that would be overwhelming to most people. It's impossible to solve all the big world problem alone, but many small streams can make a river. And as individuals, we have this we can influence the market by making thoughtful choices. Stores will stock what sells. So when we choose sustainable options, we show companies what we value. And this power to kind of shape demand is very tricky, of course, because it depends on so many different factors. Price is one of them, and it's not always easy to navigate. But I do believe that we can make a huge progress anyway from where we are today by just educating ourselves, educate our children. We can learn them about food and where it comes from, and for companies to be more transparent about what is really in the products that we buy.
So it ends up with, let's say, people taking conscious choices that will definitely reshape the economy, and that should be how it works. Perfect. So I'll stop here. As I said, conversation was longer than usual, but I think that we went through a couple of very important concepts. And I think that we have proven that sustainability is not only about energy saving, but it's a much complex topic which requires a little bit more, let's say, a well-thought approach. We still have a couple of minutes for Q&A. So if you were hesitating to publish the questions on the chat, I think that's the time. We have our experts sitting here. And let's maybe go through a couple of questions. And there are a couple actually already in the separate chat.
You seem surprised.
No, I mean, there are two chats, let's say. I think that first question could be to Deap, actually.
Okay.
Because it's related to the COP29. And so Luis is asking, how do you think the agreements achieved there are helping in the circular economy effort? What is your opinion?
It's a great question. It's a very difficult question to answer, to be fair. So, you know, the last few COPs have been very contentious. However, there is still progress being made. It's very slow, but we are starting to see change. We are starting to see more financial commitments go into those right places. I personally do not think it's happening fast enough, but we are still making it move. We are still starting to see it move in the right direction. So that's kind of what I'm seeing at the moment.
Okay. The second question is rather tough, and it's about the metal recycling. So I'm sorry to say.
Okay.
But it's a good point. So the point is that due to various regulations and industry-specific standards within the aviation industry, it seems that the aviation industry can only use the new metal, and no recycling metal is allowed. So the one thing that the colleagues can do is to put pressure on the regulatory bodies, but what else could they do? I think that's a tough question, and that's at the end it's a matter of those regulations, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there is, of course, a big trend in the metal recycling industry to get the quality, of course, much higher of the recycled products. So get copper out and, all the other stuff to get the clearness of, let's say, the metals as well. But I think if we are talking about those regulations, for sure, there is no other way than, let's say, going the conventional way of, let's say, getting, let's say, the source material from ground, basically. But
well, it's one of these industries where probably it's a little bit harder to influence regulations, right? It's a industry that focuses on safety. So I guess that's unfortunately no way around it. Okay. The next one is interesting. In regards to reducing the impact on the environment and mapping the scope 3 of the carbon neutrality, what could be done? And there are two hints that Eric, who is asking this question, is already pointing out, which is advanced automation and uptake of AI. Yeah. So, what could be done to reduce the impact on the environment, especially having in mind the scope 3 of the carbon, net zero, let's say, concept. And well, first thing that comes to my mind immediately is the Eco-Advisor. It will not give you the simple answer to handle scope 3, but the Eco-Advisor could support this kind of efforts, mostly due to the fact that it does suggest solutions to the energy waste, right? So it is giving you, based on the analysis of what's going on in your factory, it's giving you hints on how the waste in energy use is generated. So I think that would be, personally, I would start with that. But maybe Wojciech, you would like to add something to that.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I would reply to this as following. If you are concerned about the scope 3 emissions, please take a look that everything what appears in scope 3 is at the same time scope 1 and scope 2 emission for the company which is already in your value chain. Okay, so I would say that perhaps if I don't know if Eric, who is asking this question, if he's a member of a manufacturing company, but I would say that good practices, of course, start at your own field. Yeah, like I think there are already examples of companies who started their, so to say, green journey in the past, like a very famous manufacturer of furniture. I think we are not allowed to speak about particular brands here, or mobile phone manufacturer, and they already made some certain effort in the past to achieve net zero or carbon neutrality in their own manufacturing process, okay? So if they already have good practices which they implemented, and if they tested, okay, so here we can speak about our own solutions. So if they already tested, and we can say that on their own example, they certified that some certain solutions help them to achieve net zero neutrality in scope 1, for example, then I would say that the next step should be also to promote this kind of solutions approach activities to your suppliers, and then exert some pressure on them to promote this and to copy paste this success to their sub-suppliers, okay? And this is, in my opinion, probably this is not the only way how you can influence scope 3, but I would say that this perhaps can be one of the practices that was already tested somewhere, and then you can easily copy this to your complete value chain.
And I would add to that in terms of growing your relationships with your suppliers, having a two-way conversation, sharing learnings, also participating within networks who are also understanding that they've also got the same challenges. So coming together, sharing knowledge, being able to share solutions is a really powerful way to find answers for your own scope 3.
Yeah, it's a good
we can
point.
all learn from each other. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like, we could say that sharing is caring in this case, and once you have some good practices, you should also expand this to all of your value chain.
It's a good point about that, because actually that just reminded me that I had this conversation with a colleague from Thailand, and he said that sustainability efforts are actually quite big in Thailand, because those local companies from Thailand are affected by expectations from European partners. So the European partners kind of export this need for sustainable production to those countries, to those companies. So I think that that's a good point. And I think that this point about the partnerships is probably the best approach when it comes to scope 3. That's a good point. So Eric, thanks for the reply. And if we could share more information about EcoAdvisor. I don't know if someone from my team is in the call, but if you could share maybe the link in the chat just to give an overview on the EcoAdvisor, that would help. But yes, I think that's a good solution as well, because it, as Wojtek said, it changes the weight of who should be responsible for that, and the electrician is no longer the main person, let's say, so it's more of a data analyst. And there is a question about the food waste to soil machines. It's a good question. How can we know that those machines are actually sustainable? I mean, the Jakub asks that they sure do good things, but they also consume energy. And if he asks if there are any standards or norms to calculate that. I would start by saying that we didn't mention so much details about how those machines work, but I think that a lot of this is related to the chemical processes as well within the machine.
Yeah.
So at least my personal feeling is that they don't use that much energy, but maybe you could also share your point of view.
Well, I don't have the details, of course, but we could find that out for the person that asks, of course, if we talk to this company. But that is an important aspect in their point of view, of course, that they are making sustainable machines because they want to create a sustainable solution. So that's a big part of the entire view from the company, of course. And the products that are built into it is very eco-friendly, so to say. So they don't take so much energy themselves, and they are also optimized to create the exact right temperature and pressure and in this machine, so that it's the right conditions to turn it
like
into soil.
Microclimate.
Yeah, microclimate. for sure. So if he wants details, please leave some contact information and I will get in touch after this session. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there are some calculations on that as
Yes,
well.
for sure. Yeah.
Okay, I think that we have maybe 1 minute for the last question. Another good one, I would say. Should you work with your supply chain, so the scope number 3, before you start your sustainability journey or after? So your own sustainability
Yeah,
journey.
and that's a really good question. It's the chicken and the egg scenario, isn't it? but I think it starts with what you've got now. There's no, if you're going to wait for the perfect solution, you could be waiting for a long time. So it's about incremental improvement over time. So start with your low-hanging fruit, the easy to make transition, but also at the same time have those conversations, grow those relationships, and take learnings from each other and find solutions together. So it's not really waiting; it's doing what you can now, but also improving over time.
Well, it's always worthwhile to think about the big picture.
Yes.
That's for sure. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Big thanks to my guests. Big thanks to the audience. That was a good conversation and also very good questions that we could spend a little bit more time discussing this. I enjoyed that very much. Thank you, guys, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Piotr.